Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the sports betting show hosted by a real statistics professor. Because we are back for college football. Finally, a little later than we wanted to be, but we are back for the 2024 college football season, week one. How's it feel to be back?
It feels great to be back. I feel like, this past Saturday for week 0 was, just perfect. Just a little taste, like not too much, just enough to kind of whet the appetite a little bit and really get you ready for, a great few days of college football coming up this week. So definitely excited to be back for sure.
Absolutely. A couple quick things here before we get to some of the housekeeping stuff. Just want to share the recap, the regular season last year for us. We had a bunch of A grades on the sides, and we had an 8% ROI on that. It was a fantastic season for us. The first year going from a team-based model to a player-based model. We did not grade totals last year. We are going to grade them this year, but the recommended totals, an 11% ROI. So a bunch of great happenings. NFL was even better, folks. So football was incredible for us last year. If you want to get all the picks, Dub Club Honor Roll is the place to be. It is free until September 1st. So make sure you hear this before you start skipping ahead till we get to the picks here. Free until September 1st with that QR code or the link in the show description will take you right there. It'll get you all the information. Folks, it's nice. It's summarized, the projections, picks, everything nice and clean cut for you so that you can digest it. A bunch of details for every game, position rankings, offense, defense, against the run, against the pass, all sorts of fun stuff. And of course, the Discord chat. So again, check that out if you have not yet. A couple of other quick notes here. Community rules, model information, pickswiththeprofessor.com/new. Again, it is a player-based model. The ratings reflect the current roster. Average grade is 100. Higher implies more points, so defenses want to be lower grades. Offenses want to be higher. We are projecting an average game. We do not know what will happen in one game. We work off of probabilities, and it works in the long run. That's what you saw in that opening slide. That's what we demonstrate season after season, year after year here, is that by operating off of probabilities, we know what prices and what numbers are good. The model is going to give us an A, a B, or a C. That's a love, a like, or a lean. We add the plus if we like it, and that's what becomes our kind of official picks. Cousin Jared, before we get to it, anything else that we should talk about? This is our 4th year now doing this show. We have come a long way. Also, literally, because we are both now in new locations from when we first started. Anything else to mention before we get into it?
I think the only thing I would say is, I feel like I've said this every year, but every year it becomes more and more true. The beginning of the college football season is just unlike the beginning of any other season, probably. Keeping up with transfers, rosters in flux, who's hurt, where did the coaches go? Obviously, you have those issues in every sport, but college football with the transfer portal the way it is now, just a lot of unknowns. So I think you're going to probably hear me reference more than a few times, like, what can we really focus on? Can we focus on what we really know? Because we have to assume a lot, we have to project a lot, but when we get down to it, what are the things we really know? So a lot of what I say today, I hope, is based on stuff we know and not me trying to project too much.
And I think that's a great segue into something that I want to make sure everyone hears before we get into this. Of course, I hear a lot of people saying things, and viewer, you may be watching this saying, I'm watching this for entertainment. I want to hear what these guys say, see how kind of on they are or whatever. But I don't really like to bet early on in the football season. Obviously, I never want you to make any bet with your money that you are not comfortable with. If we don't talk you into something, that's totally fine. It's your money. So make sure you're comfortable with anything you do. But I do like to tell people who are a little skittish at the start of the season, it's not to say that we're always going to do well at the start of the season. Last year, I think in college football, we didn't actually start great. I think it was the one of the only years we've started kind of a little bit slow. It was kind of more middle back of the year that we did better. Early on, there's just a little bit more variance. But the idea is we don't know a lot, kind of as you just mentioned, Cousin Jared, but the sports books don't either. We're all on the same page. And so that creates a little more variance. You kind of have to take some stances, and we're going to kind of talk about, hey, we're kind of feeling strong about this. That doesn't necessarily mean it's right. It just means we're going to take some stances in some places. We're going to see if it works. It tends to work more times than it doesn't. But there is going to be a little bit higher variance here these first few weeks. The thing is, after you get 3-4 weeks in, the model is going to become a lot better. It's going to figure out a lot of things. The sports books are going to know a lot more things too. So we're kind of going to be staying on the same playing field. So I don't really think there's a disadvantage necessarily to betting some of these earlier games, especially if you have like what we've got a player-based model. You mentioned the coaches and everything. That's why we're a little bit delayed. I got a little bit lagged this year with a bunch of crazy things happening in life. If you've been following us on the baseball show, you kind of know how my life's been going. It's been a little bit hectic, and all of the coaches and the systems that are changing over and which ones aren't, all the transfers, all the new players where they're just kind of lagged a little bit. That's why we're a little bit delayed from what we'll usually have a Sunday night recording rather than a Tuesday night recording. But we think we've got everything over, everybody on the right team, all the FCS stuff from those people in. It was a long process, but I think we are here. And so without further ado, we will get right to it. There are two Thursday night games. The one that everyone's talking about, North Carolina, Minnesota, because we don't have anything necessarily to say about the game. The model does have a pick that it likes on this game. We're a little bit got a lot of questions. Will be interesting to watch it. We do like this Coastal Carolina Jacksonville State game. I think there is a fantastic play to make on this one. When you look at the overall rating of these two teams, we've got that Jacksonville State is the better team, and at home, you can see there the sideline says Jacksonville State by an average of 9.7 points. The current line is Jacksonville State by 2.5. We're going to lay the 2.5. A grade from the model. We're adding the plus to it. We like it. So A plus from us, Cousin Jared. What stuck out to you about this as to why we like Jacksonville State so much?
I think Jacksonville State has a strong identity. You look at that pace number there, number one in the country. They know what they want to do, and this is a Rich Rodriguez coach team. And so it's like what he wants to do has not changed offensively from the time that he was the head coach at West Virginia, or when he was the head coach at Grand Valley State or wherever he was before that, through Michigan, everywhere else he's been. He likes to run an up-tempo offense, and the offense played well enough last year. The defense actually played pretty well too, playing across from an offense that was going that fast. I just feel like they have an identity, whereas Coastal Carolina, Chadwell left last year to go to Liberty. Obviously, you saw the impact that he had there. And Grayson McCall, yeah, they were very good. And then, of course, Grayson McCall, leaving the team this year, transferring, I believe, to North Carolina State, I think. And so I just feel like Coastal Carolina had such a unique identity that was kind of tied up in Chadwell and McCall for so long. And I think that they're just still, looking to find that. So I was like, maybe you could convince me that Jacksonville's, and I think Jacksonville State is quite a bit better team, but maybe there was a world that you can convince me Jacksonville State was, I don't know, 3.5, 4 points better prior to home field, but giving them home field advantage too, and still getting this at a number that's below a field goal. I'm a little befuddled by this. So I really like Jacksonville State in this spot. They had a great season last year, and I look for that to continue again this year.
Yeah, I'm really surprised the number is at 7, and then them just kind of daring you to go either way. And you look at this and you'd be like, probably should lay the 7, but I don't really want to, especially early on in the season. A little bit of extra. We saw in week 0, every dog hanging in there for one reason or another. Some good, some luck, some whatever. But I'm with you. And the other thing I'll add about Coastal Carolina, Ethan Vasco now, their quarterback, the model's fairly high on him, has some above average. We were fairly high on him last year when he came in as the third stringer. And I was telling people last year that he was probably better than the backup and should be getting more playing time. I think he got some playing time in the bowl game. So the model is actually pretty high on him too. I think relatively speaking, it's just like you said, he's obviously no Grayson McCall, and that's a huge loss. The Jacksonville State team was pretty good last year. You have to assume that they're only going to get better the further in they get from this transition from FCS, because it's easier to now get better transfers in from the portal and everything. And so I'm expecting another solid season from Jacksonville State. Again, we like them here at home. Again, the fact that this is 2.5 is just kind of crazy. Again, we've got it by 9.7. Moving on to Friday, handful of Friday games of note. Western Michigan and Wisconsin, maybe not the most marquee of games. I think I remember this last year where the Friday slate was a little bit weaker, a few more blowouts expected, but Wisconsin will open up at home here. against Western Michigan. They're favored by a lot. They should win by a lot. That's not really what we're here to talk about. The question is, by how much is that a lot? We've got Wisconsin as the 14th best team on the strength of the defense. We think they'll have a top 10 defense this year, maybe a little bit more of a questionable offense. Stop me if you've heard that before from Wisconsin. Western Michigan actually projects to be decent on offense, but terrible on defense. Because this seems like a really bad matchup for Western Michigan, because what they're strong at, they're probably not going to have a good time on the road getting going against Wisconsin. And the thing that they're weak on, where you could maybe get Wisconsin to struggle a little bit because their offense is not amazing for Big Ten standards, for Power 5 standards, should have a field day against Western Michigan's defense. You'd almost rather have the other way around, where the defense was stronger and maybe they could kind of, they're not going to score, but at least they could keep it low scoring. But this looks like a bad matchup. We've got Wisconsin by 34.5. It's only 23. We're going to lay the 23. A-grade pick from the model. Cousin Jared, tell us more.
And this probably the first of a few times I'm going to say this on this show. It's also maybe something where you want to look at the first half line as well and kind of evaluate what you feel most comfortable with. But so first of all, Luke Fickell, coach team, I don't have any questions about the defense. I think Wisconsin's defense is going to be solid for sure. Offensively, I was expecting more from Wisconsin last season. Tanner Mordecai got hurt at certain times. And so, maybe if he hadn't broke his hand, would that have been different? Tyler Van Dyke comes in from Miami and is now the quarterback at Wisconsin. And Tyler Van Dyke, great freshman year. Tyler Van Dyke, not great after his freshman year. But could that be a symptom of being in a Mario Cristobal offense?
We might talk more about that later.
Yeah. I think that's always something that you have to look at. So is Van Dyke going to repeat what he did his freshman year? I'm not sure, but I think he's going to be better than he's been the past 2 years. And honestly, I think that's all you have to be offensively when you're going up against this Western Michigan team, who in their non-conference games last season lost to Syracuse by 41, lost to Iowa by 31, which there's no shame in losing to Iowa by 41, but you let Iowa score 41 points. And so, if you had lost 31-0, that's something. But again, Iowa scored 41 points on them last year. And so Western Michigan they won a couple of conference games. The MAC is not good. I'm not breaking any news. They were just really not competitive at all in any of their non-conference games last season. And I don't see anything that either Western Michigan's done this season that would, drastically improve the number they would need to reach here. And I do like what Wisconsin did by bringing in Van Dyke. Mordecai wasn't giving them exactly what they need, whether that was injury or for some other reason. But I have faith in this Wisconsin defense. Wisconsin could win this game 27-0.
Yeah, speaking of the MAC, of course, I cannot wait to talk about Akron's offense and Kent State's defense later on. They are a sight to behold. But yeah, I think to me, and I was thinking about the same thing, right? How many times have we seen a quarterback up and down a little bit, beleaguered or whatever, get with a better coach, sometimes just the right coach, but sometimes just a better coach, and things just turn around and come together. And if I think of one thing with Luke Fickell, he seems just like a very solid, strong coach, a guy who's maybe not going to turn someone necessarily into a Heisman winner hotshot, but a guy who's going to get a bunch of his players and make them all very good, just kind of be solid. And that's a lot of what Wisconsin has become as well. But that's what he did with so many guys at Cincinnati, got the most out of them, had just a bunch of really good players. And that's kind of the same thing here with Van Dyke. He doesn't need Van Dyke to become a Heisman contender. He just needs Van Dyke to be solid, good, get more out of him, get him back to what he was doing before. That seems very plausible from a good coach going from a bad coach. And all of a sudden, like you said, that makes this Wisconsin offense at least passable, maybe for I guess for Big Ten standards, maybe not for Power 5 standards, but plenty good against this Western Michigan team, which, like you said, can really struggle against the big boys. And so we've got that one for Friday night. Got another Friday night one, kind of the marquee game. It is super late, folks, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. If you're like me in the Eastern time zone, it's going to be a tough one to stay up for this one. TCU and Stanford, though, of course, the marquee game heading into Saturday. Marquee game, I think I'm saying that I think the names – maybe not with regards to the talent. I don't know about you, Cousin Jared. I was a little bit surprised to see TCU, according to Sutherland, back to number 58. That seems quite a fall from grace after being in the national championship game a mere, 20 months ago at this point. Stanford obviously struggled last year, but has been a big name program for a long time. I liked what I saw from Stanford last year. They really seem to be making strides in the right direction. There's some positivity there. I think it's going to take some time for that program, but there were definitely some positive things there. Of note, though, the model has TCU and Stanford as two of the faster paced teams in the top 20. We're projecting this game to have an average of 66 points. So we're going to go over 60 A-grade pick from the model on this one for us Friday night. Cousin Jared, tell us more.
I'll start with Stanford here, and I feel like you mentioned Stanford last year. They showed some fight in them last year, and when
they were the ones that at the Colorado game, right, where they were down by 35 at the half and came back and won.
Yes. And the thing with the way that when David Shaw was there, the way that he ran the offense, you felt like if Stanford got down early, it was going to be very difficult for them to come back because they just ran such a run-heavy offense. Troy Taylor does not do that. Definitely much more of a wide-open offense now, to your point, coming back from 35 points down to Colorado last year. And you can see that their pace, Stanford's pace, is fairly high. Is the offense the best in the world? No. Ranked 90th. But it's kind of, it's not terrible. It's not like some of these teams where we'll look at their pace will be, in the top 20 and then their offensive efficiency is 110th or something like that. They have the ability
to they're going nowhere fast.
Yeah. Stanford does have the ability to make some plays, and you can see, relatively speaking, TCU's defense. I think that's probably the most shocking thing to me. Their defense being rated number 71, according to Sideline. I think Stanford's going to put up a few more points than you might think here. But with TCU, I'm hoping that they have finally found their quarterback with Josh Hoover, because last year it just felt like a revolving door of quarterbacks the first 6 weeks of the season, or however long it was. And I think it was the first game last season where they started Morris, but he got hurt and they brought in somebody else. And it was just a revolving door at quarterback for him. So I'm really hoping that Hoover is the guy. He looked really good the back half of last season. And if there's one thing that I do trust Sonny Dykes on, could his defense not be good? Yes. I have a feeling TCU's offense is going to bounce back this year. So all of those things, I think, make for a combination for a lot of points. And this number is at 60, so you could say, okay, this is just north of some key numbers. Do I want to wait? I would say no. Just go ahead and go grab this. I think this number is more likely to end up at 62, 64, something like that, as opposed to getting back down to 58 or 59. So
I think
this is one that I'm comfortable.
Yeah, I think so too, especially when you think about late game Friday night bailout situation, right? As people start looking into this throughout the day on Friday, feels like a game where it's just going to keep getting bet up and up and up. I would be really surprised to see this go down. Yep. Hoover definitely had some positive moments last year. Had a couple of hiccups for I believe he was a freshman last year, but right now the number 44th ranked starting quarterback, according to Sideline, which is pretty respectable. Like you said, we trust that offense. It's kind of weird, as you and I are fellow Texans, or at least myself, a former Texan here. We both, grew up our whole lives in Texas, and we spent so many years watching TCU and the Gary Patterson teams, which were so strong on defense. It's just so jarring to have a whole different system. But you saw at the year that they went to the national championship game, they played that game against Michigan, who had no offense, and that game got absolutely drunk with points. And then there was the whole, did they fake out the sign stealing thing, which is kind of funny, but that game had so many points, and then Georgia put up 50 on them in the first half or whatever. And that's kind of been the thing, is that they got there on offense. It wasn't about the defense. Other than a game or two, even that season, it was all about the high flying offense. They should score plenty of points against Stanford. Stanford's defense is not very good. There should be a lot of pace in this one. You never know when field goals are going to happen, turnover, stuff like that. Again, we are projecting an average game, but in general, this game is probably more likely to land closer to 70 than it is in the 50s. So we're going to go over 60, which is the end of the Friday slate heading into Saturday. Of course, folks, always, though, remember to shop around. We're talking about different numbers here as we got in money line, whether it's 5 cents, 10 cents on the money line, but especially with points, half a point here, half a point there, or the odds on those points. Shopping around, lay minus 105 at a place instead of minus 115. If you don't have multiple books in your betting portfolio, you're costing yourself some money. If you don't have an account there yet, BetUS is a great place to sign up at 125% bonus on your first ever 3 deposits, up to $2,000 a piece. Again, check out BetUS, link in the show description if you have not already.
BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
There's a couple of interesting games at noon on Saturday. We're going to start off with not one of them. Kent State and Pittsburgh. This is one of those games that might land on your TV at noon on Saturday because there are only 5 games at this time slot. We're going to go under 55 in this one. The model's projecting 45.7, largely on the strength of the fact that while Kent State is terrible at everything, they aren't necessarily trying to do it very fast. And Pittsburgh, of course, is stronger on defense than they are on offense. Because, Jared, what is your thought about this? Of course, 55, the most key number in college football. So there is that. We are talking about this. We like this at under 55 a whole lot more than 54.5. But beyond the key number, what jumps at you?
What are the books thinking? That's what jumps out to me on this one. Okay, you mentioned Kent State. They're bad at everything. Don't want to spend too much time talking about them. Pitt.
I mean, but we do. We're kind of sick like that, but you know.
Yeah, we will. I'm sure we will spend way too much time talking about Kent State on some midweek game later this year. Pitt, the defense, okay, whatever. The offense is bad. And the thing is that Pitt has seemingly decided that they are actively making a decision that we want to be terrible on offense. Pat Narduzzi has gone through offensive coordinator after offensive coordinator and never wanted to hire anybody that did anything innovative. If he had Walt Bell for 1 year, let's go way back there. Walt Bell, formerly head coach at UMass, now the offensive coordinator at Western Michigan, who we talked about earlier. They had the one good season with Kenny Pickett, and they ran Walt Bell off. Yeah. And it was a lot of that Kenny Pickett, probably so. But still, you had one good offensive season and you ran off your offensive coordinators. Yeah. Pittsburgh and Narduzzi are just anti-offense. They want to milk the clock. This game's going to end up being like 35-7 or something. So just a team that doesn't have any interest in offense. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, the average projection of this game, according to Sidelines, 34 to an average of 12. They probably won't end up with 12, but something kind of like you were saying. I'm thinking back. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, this was Kent State in the opener last year against Central Florida, a number that we thought was a little bit too high, and we took the under. And that was, maybe it was 2 seasons ago, but it was Central Florida, a team that just wanted to fly, and they just ran the hurry up the entire game. And it's like, yeah, that game opened up the season and had a lot of points in it because Kent State is atrocious on defense, way worse on defense by a long shot than anybody else. But again, in a game against UCF, who wanted to play fast, with the head coach who wants to go fast, was just a very different. And that game was over by halftime. But again, it's very different against Pittsburgh. We talked about this last year with Narduzzi, maybe even the year before with the offensive coordinator changes, that he's just like, stuck on, we're going to run the ball, 80% of the time, and it's not quite that high, but it's like he wants to, it's like run the ball in short passes. It's like, we don't want to stretch the field at all. And it doesn't make any sense. Their quarterback situation hasn't gotten any better. They had 3 guys they were starting last year. Towards the end of the season, they were just like, we didn't even know who they were going to play. And one of those guys is back, and the model is just very like meh on him. And I'm not sure he's any good or not, but I don't think he has a chance to be that good in this offense. And so, they'll score off Kent State because Kent State is atrocious on defense. But like you said, there should be very little pace, hurry up, no tempo in this one, which is going to make it hard, not impossible, but hard to get to that many points. It's going to take a bunch of busted plays, especially over 55, given that 55 again the most key number in college football. So under 55 is just a fantastic look from us here.
And we don't have to litigate this right now, but just looking at those numbers from Kent State, is Kent State 2024 version of Kent State the worst team that Sideline has ever projected? We can't figure that out right now. But that's really bad. That's really bad.
It's really bad. It does not look good for them if you're an alumni fan there. Because we aren't going to cover every game on the show. We have, I think, 19 picks for the people. So we're going to hopefully keep this to an hour, maybe an hour and a half at most. There are
2
some
hours.
No, we got to do better than that. There are some games that people want to bet on that are big games, and we have some thoughts on them. Do we want to do that? We haven't even talked about. Do we want to do them at their time slot and kind of mix them in, or do we want to kind of just do all of that at the end of the show? Which way do you want to go on that?
Let's mix them in with the time slot. I'm very time oriented on my
very
Saturdays.
time oriented. Okay, there's 2 games at noon that really caught my eye that we don't have an official pick on them, at least as of yet. We might later in the week, and that's again why you want to be on Dub Club. You get all these updates that you immediately. Obviously, Clemson, Georgia, the game everyone is talking about. This game we liked the over when it was at 48. It's now across the board up to 48.5. That's the problem with us delaying as we were recording this, so we weren't able to get that out there. We do project 52.5, but 48 is a very key number in college football. When we think about key numbers, especially in college football, NFL gets a little bit weirder because there's actually more field goals in NFL. But in college football, the way to think about key numbers is basically a multiple of 7 minus 1. Think about 2 field goals replacing one of your touchdowns. And that's why, 57 is divisible, 56 is divisible by 7, but 55 is actually the key number. 7 less than that's 48. 48 is the key number, not 49. I know people think about how you get to 49. There's a whole bunch more ways you can get to 48. Than 49. And so 48 is the key number here. It's gone above that key number. Obviously, Cousin Jared, we would tell people, let's hope it comes back down. You can get a 48 and go over that. If it doesn't, what are you telling people? Or maybe why are you telling people to hold off if it doesn't?
So I would still hold off because I think that obviously, I know these are 2 good defensive football teams, but the reason why I like going over at 48 is because the defenses are good, yes, but Georgia's offense is still good. They're not as good as the defense, but Georgia's offense is still good. I think Carson Beck's going to have a great season. Clemson has reached the point where they just find a way offensively. It's never pretty, but it's always, for the most part, enough. Like, even I think back last year to the Clemson and Florida State game where, like, clearly looking back on it, that Florida State team outclassed Clemson in just about every single way. But it was, 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and you're like, how is Clemson still in this game? How has Clemson scored 20 points or whatever it was? So
it looked like they didn't move the ball like all game, it seemed like it. Is how it felt.
Yes. And I think that as good as these defenses are, the offenses are going to do enough where the final score of this game is going to end up being a normal college football game. And what's a normal college football game? It's going to be around 48, 52, 55 points. It's going to be somewhere in there. So I just think
even with the clock change last year, the average score is still in the low 50s.
Yeah, and so I think this game is going to be an average scoring game. I just think there's a lot of value in getting that over 48, and I'll lose just a little bit too much for me personally. It just makes me feel a little bit worse. I would rather wait. If it goes back down to 48, great. If it goes to 49, there's no difference really in 48 and a half and 49. So I'm fine with waiting on this. Really hope I can get a 48 though.
And there's just what I'm hearing you say, and we've done this a lot, right? Where I like to listen to what you say, and sometimes I try to have to talk you into things because you're a little bit, reticent on things. But what I'm really hearing you say, I think, is, we do think it can get to that average score game, but these defenses are so good that there's so many ways it can land on 48 that you just don't want to be holding over 48 and a half and it be one of those ways at the end, and you're just begging for a score and someone's milking the clock at the end of the game. Presumably Georgia, of course, because Georgia is obviously a big favorite in that one. Of note, Sideline actually has Georgia's offense rated higher than their defense relative to everybody else. It is very high on the offense this year. That's, of course, losing the man-child at tight end who was Brock Bowers, who was unfair, to even have like a human cheat code when he was out there. So some thoughts on that one. The other one, and the model is not even giving us any help on this one, but Penn State, West Virginia. I have a thought on this one. I don't know if you'll agree or not, Cousin Jared, but we talk a lot about Penn State in the Big 10 against not Michigan and Ohio State. Just lay the points because they can't hang with either one of those two teams. Now, Michigan, I think, is going to be an interesting case this year. Their offense is going to take a huge step back with all the pieces they lost, with all offensive linemen they lost, et cetera. So kind of we'll put a pin in that, come back to it. This is a non-conference game, but West Virginia is interesting. The model's pretty high on them. A lot of people are high on them. They're not far from being the top-rated Big 12 team in sideline. So my gut here says just lay it with Penn State because they tend to take care of business unless it's Ohio State or Michigan. But are we buying into the hype of West Virginia? What's your take on this one? Obviously, at 8, it's tough. If you're laying 7, it's very different. But at 8, how are you feeling about this?
Oh, man. So I tend to agree with you. Is Morgantown an exception to some rules that we have? Because that's kind of what runs through my mind.
Now, of note, in the model, Morgantown does get a higher home field advantage than just about every place in college football because it is notoriously a tough place to play because of the travel getting in is taxing on everybody because you cannot just fly a commercial airline jet into Morgantown. You have to fly into Pittsburgh and then bus, which is very unusual. And so that extra travel for them, on top of course, a great crowd in Morgantown makes it very difficult to play there. So that is accounted for in the model, which still says Penn State by 10. But you're right, Morgantown is could be a rule breaker.
Yeah, and I could even counter that thought myself by going back to Penn State in 2022 when they went to Auburn and won 41-12. So they've played in tough places and won. I think the thing that probably strikes me a little bit more, and I don't know if I disagree with sideline here. Let me double check myself. I would actually go over. I think that would probably be my favorite play in this game. If what we just talked about holds, Penn State's going to score some points in this game. At the same time, if West Virginia keeps this game close, I think it's because they have found a way to score, 24, 28 points or something like that. So I think probably the over is where I would lean on that one more than a side. I just think that I think there's more ways that game goes over than stays under.
I think, and again, all the full projections, everything for every single game you can get over on Dub Club. I believe when it was 51, I believe we had a B grade to the over. Now at 52, it is down to a C grade. The model projects 53.5. So it's the ever slightest lean to that over. Key number wise there, it would be 51, I believe, would be slightly more of a key number than 52. So another one of those, or maybe if it comes back down a little bit, could try that. Enough about that. Back to an actual pick that we love, that we really think you should bet on. It is tough, but you do have to remember, folks, you don't have to watch them to make the money. So what I mean by that is, of course, the best games sometimes have really tight lines and it's tougher to profit off of them. That doesn't mean it can't be fun to put $1 or $2 on it, $5 on it, whatever, a smaller wager. But sometimes the weaker games are the ones that have more value. And that's what we think here on a lot of these, including one of the other noon games that may not be as interesting, Virginia Tech and Vanderbilt. And Cousin Jared, the main thing I'll say about this is we are very high on Virginia Tech. Around these parts, we have them in the top 20. They came on strong last year. We'll talk a little bit about Georgia Tech, another team like this that the model was kind of tepid on at the start of the season, and that it just kept overperforming and just looking better and better. We expect big things from them here. We're going to lay the 13 with Virginia Tech, A grade pick. The model says by 18.5. Vanderbilt with Diego Pavia is going to be much improved. Number 87 overall is, among the highest we've typically seen Vanderbilt in the last decade. They've gotten up there occasionally into that realm, but so many times, of course, they've been more in the 1-teens. But they're still going to be very overmatched, we think, by Virginia Tech. What are your thoughts on this Virginia Tech team and the hype surrounding them this season?
I think I can't believe I'm saying this. I think Virginia Tech is going to be a pretty decent team is what I would say this year. But for me, this is more about Vanderbilt and just how, as much as it pains me, there has just not been any proof of concept from Clark Lee on how this Vanderbilt team is going to get turned around. Maybe you saw a little bit of something in 2022 when they beat Kentucky and Florida in back-to-back weeks towards the end of the season. But
Is
then
that the year that they beat Hawaii like 100-0 to start the season or something like that? We were all like,
yeah,
whoa.
that was approximately, that is when that happened. But the problem is you've got the 2023 happened. That's the problem. And they just did not look good at any point last season. They lost the last 10 games in a row last year. The last time that Vanderbilt would have covered this number against a Power 5 team, you got to go back to the middle of 2022. They would have covered this number against obviously the 2 games they won, and then they would have covered this number against Missouri. So they covered a lot 2 years ago. Last year, they covered against UNLV on the road.
UNLV was a pretty solid team.
Yeah.
We'll talk about them later, actually.
Yeah, but Virginia Tech probably closer to some of the SEC schools than UNLV, and I mean, Vanderbilt just looked hopeless the back half of last year. So I think this is a combination of me being high on Virginia Tech, thinking they're going to have a pretty good season, but also just being low on Vanderbilt and not really seeing the light at the end of the tunnel for them.
I think this number is this low because of Pavia, who is a fantastic quarterback. We wrote him a lot. We made a lot of money backing him, and he took a New Mexico State team that did not have a lot of talent to new heights. And the model is taking and saying we know he's a great quarterback. What the model has him as the number 28 ranked quarterback in college football. And of course, we saw what he did last year with the upset of Auburn, was it?
Yep.
Which was impressive. I think this number is still hanging on the south side of 14, or the better side for us of 14, when I think it should be closer to 17 because of him. But the thing I want to talk about here with Virginia Tech, I would have thought they would have been a 3-win team last year, maybe a 4-win team. The fact that they got into the bowl, finished with 7 wins, was really impressive. And when I was going through rosters to try to make some comments, I made some comments to our Discord about some things, some fun names, some things I saw, and I was texting you as well on some of it. And we were talking about the hype of Virginia Tech, and I made the comment, man, they brought back so many pieces. Like, as I'm adjusting rosters around, they were one of the teams that just seemed like, oh yeah, this guy played well for them last year, he's back. And that was just like the whole case. And then the positions that they didn't, it seemed like the guys that they brought in were guys who played for legit schools. They weren't just cast-offs from, Georgia or something like that. They actually played minutes. I don't remember, for what teams. So it seems like they're going to be set up for a really strong year. If that's the case, they should be able to go in and take care of business against Vanderbilt. So, week 1, time to put up or shut up here for Virginia Tech. Because one last question before we move on from the noon slot about Virginia Tech. After we saw what we did from Florida State, and we'll talk about them later, offensive line has some questions, to say the least. After we saw what we did from SMU, who should have beat Nevada by 40, barely hanging on in what would have become like the biggest upset in college football going back over a year. We feel like the ACC is wide open. Do you think Virginia Tech has a chance to win the ACC this year?
I do think they have a chance to win the ACC this year. I think Florida State has a chance. I think Clemson has a chance. I think North Carolina State has a chance. I think SMU has a chance. I might be surprised if it was. No.
They got some tiebreakers now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I don't know if I would put Georgia Tech in that category. I think that
Miami
conference, of course, Miami is going to be in there as well. Miami may be limited by internal factors. But anyway, I think that one is going to be wide open. Before the season, I would have said that SMU was my team. Felt really good about that after Florida State lost. Felt not great about that after watching SMU play. I think I would just probably stick with my gut going into the season. I would have picked SMU, but
write that off as a week 0. We knew we were going to win, so we didn't want to show our cards. We wanted to keep it vanilla, and then everything went south. I'm not sure they punted in the entire game, so it was just kind of a weird game, and then it just kind of got. So maybe we'll write that off a little bit. I don't know.
Yes, and for me, the difference between that and like Florida State, for example, is you've got 3 years of data on DJ, a quarterback for Florida State. It's just like kind of is what he is at this point. Whereas that's been a consistent theme for him. Whereas what you saw from SMU, like clearly that was just like a one game, like that has not been a pattern. I feel like some of the stuff you're seeing with Florida State part of last year.
What I would argue with Florida State on both sides of the line, offensive and defensive, is that's not about a vanilla game plan. A vanilla game plan is, we're not doing exotic runs, we're not doing exotic passes, we're not quite whatever. We're just kind of trying to go straight ahead or whatever. And if you're doing that, the line shouldn't get beat the way that Florida State's line got beat, which is a different issue. All right, we'll finally move on past the noon slot into the 3:30 Eastern slot. Florida International, Indiana. Again, we cover maybe not the most sexy games, but the ones that we think you can make money on. That's why you're here, folks. We're going to lay it with Indiana. We're going to lay 21 and the hook. We're going to lay 21 and a half. It doesn't even matter the hook. We've got this at 29.2. We think this should be more of a 4-touchdown game than a 3-touchdown game. Our boy Curtis Rourke, a legend at Ohio, going to Indiana. Also, the coach from James Madison, I believe, going to Indiana as well. And if you haven't heard, he did some pretty good things at James Madison. It's going to be a tall task for him to have success at Indiana, given the conference that they are in. But I mean, he did some great things at James Madison. It's got to start here for him with a nice convincing win over a bottom 10 team in college football. So I bet his Indiana at number 50. They brought in a lot of transfers, of course, and having a guy like Curtis Rourke at the helm. Yeah. Pretty solid quarterback for Indiana. Why do we think they can win so handily?
I love everything that Indiana did this offseason. Cignetti, obviously, a great track record as a coach. Rourke, great track record at quarterback. I think also, just as importantly, changing the vibe around the program, a lot more confidence than what they had before. So I just love everything about Indiana. FIU's not that great. Don't look at the numbers there. Don't need to go too in depth on that. The thing is that as improved as Indiana is it gonna matter when conference play starts? They can hang in some games. I don't know how it's going to translate to wins and losses. And so I think there is going to be a sense of urgency from Indiana and just like a sense of, hey, let's let our hair down and just have some fun in this game, because we're probably not going to be able to do that much for the rest of the season. They've got 2 more out-of-conference games. I don't know who else they're playing in those other 2 out-of-conference games, but they're going to have like maybe this one single week to really let things go. And I think they have the talent and the coaching and everything to kind of do that now that they didn't have before. So I just think that this is going to be a really good, a much improved Indiana team this year, and I think that's going to show up in games like this. It might not show up too much in conference, though.
They get Western Illinois next week, so that'll be a win. Okay. They'll get Charlotte at home, who Charlotte we'll talk a little bit about later. It's definitely another win. A question mark. But at Northwestern, they'll have a chance in that one. Home against Nebraska, they'll have a chance against that one. At Michigan State, maybe. Home against Purdue should be a win for them with how bad Purdue is. Home against Maryland, they've got a chance to make a bowl. Obviously, you cannot, take this one lightly. You need to go out and take care of business, and especially next week as well. Start off 2-0 and move on. I think their game plan is it'll be really interesting for me to see what they do in this game and Western Illinois. Not that we will have any money on that one because it'll be an FCS contest, but it'll be interesting to me because I think when they get to conference, their game plan is going to be, look at that defense, ranked number 30 in college football. The model is very high on Indiana's defense. The transfers that they brought in, their defense was decent last year at times. If that's their game plan, is going to be defense, and then Curtis Rourke's going to play hero ball, and he's going to help us win some close games, that's obviously not going to be anything part of the game plan against Florida International. So their game plan going forward, we won't even really see that here for the first 2 weeks. It will be interesting to see, of course, if that defense is as good as the model thinks it is. And if so, it's going to be really difficult for FIU to score, making it easier, of course, for Indiana to cover. We don't mind the hook. We're letting 21.5, 8 grade there, again, for the 3:30 slot.
And I would just say, because I think that the Big Ten schedule it's going to be a gauntlet for these teams, because you just listed off some winnable games there, but they're also playing Washington, who knows about Washington this year. They're still playing Michigan, who they're going to be outmanned against. They're still playing Ohio State. So and
some of the travel is going to be tough in the middle of the season, randomly going across the country.
Yeah. Yeah, I just man, the Big Ten and the SEC this year, like you really need to, and like
In the
I'm
Big 12.
yeah, and the Big 12, like I am reminding myself of this. You really got to look at some of these schedules now because they are, in good years, the Big Ten schedule is very unbalanced between the East and West, but
Yeah.
now even more so. Like you could just run a gauntlet
Well, and,
one year.
in all these conferences, like there's a couple of bad teams in all of them
Mhm.
that you could accidentally end up playing 3 or 4 of them.
Yep.
2 or 3 of them, maybe all of them. But then you might not get any of them, or only one of them. You might end up or if you are one of those weaker teams, right? You might end up playing every single conference game against like a top 40 team because all 3 of those conferences,
like Florida this year as an example, the worst draw that you can get. They have every good team. Yeah. So anyway,
it's gonna be interesting. This one might be the stinker of the week. Cousin Jared, Eastern Michigan and UMass. I'm not even sure if this game's going to be on television, probably on ESPN Plus. But my goodness, this game might get ugly. We've gone back and forth with our love-hate relationship with Eastern Michigan over the years. This one, we think Eastern Michigan wins more than they don't. But if nothing else, this is one of our favorites around these parts. The WTF game, wrong team favored. We think it should be Eastern Michigan slightly favored. Instead, it's UMass slightly favored. We're going to take Eastern Michigan plus 125 on the money line. A-grade pick from the model. Obviously, both of these teams have shown some promise here at times. They've also shown some real weaknesses. Neither one of these teams is very good. Who knows what's going to happen? Plus odds makes sense. That's kind of my angle on it. What's yours, Cousin Jared?
So I'm going to pose a question to you here. When do you think the last time that when was the last full season that Eastern Michigan won less than 5 games? The last full season that Eastern Michigan won less than 5 games.
So you asked me the question. It's clearly not like 2 years ago. I'm going to guess like 2016.
2015 is the last season that Eastern Michigan won less than 5 games. 2020, they only won 2 games there. They only played 6, so that doesn't count. So the last full season that they won less than 5 games was 2015. They won 1 game in 2015. Wow. Chris Creighton does not get enough credit for what he has done at Eastern Michigan, and I mentioned that time.
He also got a coach fired a couple years ago, which was pretty impressive.
Arizona State, I think it was. And so, and actually, of that range that I mentioned, they only won 5 games one time. They were bowl eligible in all of those other seasons, excluding 2020, which is just amazing. And you want to know how you do that? By beating the crap out of UMass. I have no idea why this line is the way it is. I see the numbers that you're putting in front of me, and do they paint Eastern Michigan to be a marvelous team? Absolutely not. They do not. But I kind of talked at the beginning of the show about what I know, and I know that Chris Creighton finds a way every year to win 5 or 6 games, 7 games with this Eastern Michigan team in the MAC. And you could say it's the MAC. Well, I mean, UMass isn't even good enough for the MAC. Yeah. And so, are they in the MAC now? I'm going to feel really dumb if I said that.
I think they are now in the MAC next year, maybe.
Okay, I do feel like that's coming at some point. So maybe I retract my statement.
Because right now they're still 3 independents, but I think next year they're going to go to the MAC.
Okay, so point still stands. UMass for now not good enough for the MAC, and UMass is just a bad team. And Eastern Michigan, time and time again, they win these types of games. They win the games that they should win, and they jump up and win a game or two that they probably shouldn't win. I have faith in Chris Creighton. Great program, what he has done there. They don't lose to teams like UMass. So I love Eastern Michigan.
Shout out to a friend of the pod, friend of the show, one of our friends on Discord. Maybe the most confusing result of the season last year, week 0, when UMass went into New Mexico State and won by 11. That was very confusing when that happened. After that, UMass not only lost to Eastern Michigan, only by 2 on the road, but they lost. Eastern Michigan found, like you said, found a way to win.
Yep.
UMass won at Army at the point of Army season where they were looking good. And then the LSU game happened, and then they got some injuries, and fell apart. This was part of the tank. They also beat Merrimack at home by 10. That was the rest of their season. They lost by double digits at home to UConn. They got crushed by mediocre teams. They gave up 52 to Arkansas State, who kind of developed an offense, but they lost at home to New Mexico, who was not very good last year. They lost at home to Miami of Ohio, who was at least a solid team, but again, they weren't even competitive in that one. So, kind of like you said, UMass, they did have that one great start to the season last year. They hung in this game last year at Eastern Michigan. I think this will be a tight game because I'm not sure either team is necessarily that much better than the other. But like you said, we've got the better coach on their side here. And the plus odds. If Eastern Michigan was minus 130, I'd be like, that seems about right. They probably should win. I'm not dying to lay odds in a game where I don't know a lot of what's happening. But where we've got the better coach on their side, according to Stanford, the better team, the plus odds makes a lot of sense. A plus 125 A grade pick on Eastern Michigan.
And sorry, before we move on, I have to read you Florida's schedule. I can't believe that you haven't.
I haven't seen this.
You don't know Florida's schedule. Okay, so open up the season against Miami. Okay, we're going to talk about that a little bit later.
It's a tough non-conference game.
And then here is their easiest 3-game stretch of the season. Is the following 3 games: Samford, okay,
yeah.
Texas A&M at home, at Mississippi State.
Wow.
And
it's tough to win there.
Yeah. And then things go downhill from there. The next 3 games: UCF at Tennessee, home to Kentucky. And then listen to this month of November. If you're a Florida fan, I am so sorry. Georgia in Jacksonville, at Texas, LSU at the Swamp, Ole Miss at the Swamp, at Florida State. Thoughts and prayers to the Florida fans out there.
That's brutal. Welcome to college football in the new
world.
Speaking of Miami and Florida, here we go. This is also
perfect.
one of the 3:30 p.m. Eastern games of the marquee game. So we do have a pick on this one. We're going to go under 54. The model is projecting 51.5, only a B grade. All the other ones we've had so far have been A grades. We do like this one. So we are giving this the B plus grade. There's a couple other Bs coming later. Mostly we'll stick to the As. Enough of an edge to be a model like. We like going under in this one. Should be a tight game. Not really sure who wins. Both of these teams have some flaws, but Miami's got a lot of talent, of course, on both sides of the ball. This should be a really interesting game. What's your take? Why do we like under 54, especially under 54, knowing that 55 is that key number that we'd really love to get? What's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so first of all, Florida is their offense is rated number 26. I guess maybe it's the level of competition that they played against. It doesn't feel like it's number 26. I'm a little bit concerned they lost.
It's all the good defenses.
I have a little bit of concern they lost Pierce, all their best playmaker last year. Graham
Mertz ranked number 26 quarterback. And Graham Mertz, from everything I saw from him, actually, he looked much better than he looked at Wisconsin. He actually looked pretty good. He wasn't the problem when things went south last year. It was everybody else was the problem.
And I partially feel like that is the problem, that you can look at the quarterback and say that we have much improved play maybe from what we expected from him, and it still just felt discombobulated and like they had their fits and starts, and it just wasn't very consistent. So I just don't have a ton of faith in Florida's offense. Miami, and going back to what I said at the beginning about the things that we know and the things that we think and feel and all those different things, Mario Cristobal just has a history of severely underperforming offenses. And I just have
also
not
questionable clock management, but that's a whole other story.
Questionable clock management, a lot of different things. You could counter that with he's got Cam Ward. Cam Ward, previously of Washington State, good. I think it was at Incarnate Word before that, did really well at the FCS level. Sideline thinks that Ward is solid, but not spectacular.
Yep, number 32 ranked quarterback according to the model.
Yeah, but I go back to when we were talking about Wisconsin and Van Dyke. After Van Dyke's freshman season, there was talk about him being one of the top picks in the draft whenever he came out because he had so much talent. And we saw what happened after that. Cristobal's offenses have a history of severely underperforming. So to me, this is a perfect conversation of a Florida offense that I do not have much faith in, a Miami offense that I don't have much faith in. All of the early season things that we talk about, maybe maybe the offense is taking a while to get in a rhythm there early in the season. How are you going to look on your first unscripted drive of the season? I just think that I trust both of these defenses a lot more than I trust the offenses, and I do not trust the quarterback play for either team.
Folks, if you go back and rewatch that segment and take a drink every time you heard a football cliche, you might be dead at this point. That was pretty impressive there from you, Cousin Jared. I liked it.
Thanks.
I will also point out one of the things that I think is going to be problematic with these two good defenses. The model is not as high on Florida's defense, but it is still a good defense, and given like you said against the Miami offense, might actually have a slight advantage because we don't know exactly how Cristobal's going to screw things up. But Miami's defense, of course, is very strong. And this is, again, all these things are available for every single game over on Dub Club, but the run blocking for Miami ranks number 60 in college football. That is their weakest unit of anything, is their run blocking. Number 60 for a team that's overall number 13 is not very good. Florida's ranks 87, which is terrible. Neither one of these teams look at this point, and you never know. This is the first game. Things could change in a hurry, but at least based off what we know from these guys, from their data from previous years, from their recruiting, blah, 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 the run blocking looks to be suspect for both of these teams. That could really come into play here and help us with this under. If you're not able to run the ball, you turn one-dimensional, these defenses get to pin their ears back. These quarterbacks might be in trouble just under pressure all day long. And so I'm not a big, you have to run the ball, blah, blah, blah type guy, but to some extent, you do need to be able to have all the threats available to you. And I'm not sure that's going to happen, especially if there is any early season, the offense isn't synced up and that run blocking isn't quite the par. These defenses might have a field day. The last thing I wanted to say about this, if Mario Cristobal ever figures out how to get an offense going, it's going to feel like, you and I are Astros fans. When they were so bad, we had the whole, like, one day we're going to win and we're going to laugh and laugh. I feel like if you're a Mario Cristobal fan, if you're a friend of his or whatever, or if you're a Miami fan, you're like, one day he's going to figure out the offense and we're going to laugh and laugh and laugh, because if it does, it's going to all come together. But unfortunately for them, it has not yet. Moving on to UTEP and Nebraska. We haven't really said this much. I have in our notes, we could have, which ones we both liked, which ones just I liked. I think of all of the picks so far, I think this is the first one that we both highlighted, that we both liked. This might be one of my favorite plays of the day here. Under 49, again, your key number here is 48, so 48.5 would be just as fine. The model's projecting 41 points in this game. UTEP's offense is terrible. Nebraska's defense is really good. And as a Baylor alum and fan, seeing Matt Rule, we saw it also in Nebraska. He has no hurry at all. His goal is to play a 0-0. I think he's even said before, his goal is to play a 0-0 first half. His goal is to run the ball 3 times, get 3 yards of carry in the first half, and punt, and just punish everybody so that they're worn down and so that they can win 10-6 in the fourth quarter or something like that. I just don't know how there's going to be points in this game, because I don't know how UTEP scores, and Nebraska just doesn't either want to score or seem to be capable of scoring. That's what we've seen before. I don't see why that changes. Cousin Jared, what's your take on this one? You're on mute though, so you have to little early season struggles here with with the technical. Everyone's in week 1 form.
Who needs maybe even in week 0, just getting warmed up. So Cornhusker fans would tell you that they have Dylan Raiola at quarterback now, and that is going to make all the difference. And I'm sure he is going to be an outstanding quarterback. But nothing can escape the gravitational pull that is Matt Rule and the way that he likes to play football. And I mean, we could just write a book on it at this point. I mean, how much profit have we made off Matt Rule unders, first half unders, game unders? This is no different. The way that this loses.
Also, let us not forget to mention. Also, we like the first half under in this one.
Yes, of course. That goes without saying.
If you've been here any time, you know that.
Somebody on Discord last week asked us, like, "Hey, how do we should I double up on this game? Should I bet the side and the total? And we kind of went off and talked about it a little bit. I'm doubling up on the Nebraska total. Definitely playing the first half under, definitely playing the full game under, like under every way you can cut it in this game. So now let me tell you how that loses. A special teams thing. Like that is how this one ends, or interception return for
a bunch
touchdown.
of broken plays, or just it's gonna be chaos. It's the only one loses, really.
Yeah. If Matt Rule plays the game the way that he wants to play the game, if Nebraska controls the game the way you would expect them to against a team like UTEP, this game easily goes under.
Yeah, and it's not like UTEP wants to drive the pace up. They know they're outmatched. They're going to be out physical. They know that they're going to get bruised up from all those big, Midwestern boys. And I don't know what their game plan is. I haven't been in the huddle with them. I haven't been in the coaches' meetings with them. I haven't been in the locker room. But I would be very surprised if they're like, we want to play this up tempo. Like they're not going to be in a hurry either, I would imagine. I'm surprised. This feels like it should be the low 40s. We saw some ridiculously low totals from Nebraska last year, and most of those still went under. This one's not ridiculously low. I don't know why it won't go under as well. The quarterback situation, of course, one of many questionable situations. Exactly what are they doing? How much? Who's going to play? That sort of thing. Henrik Harburg, who played towards the end of the season last year, is also in the mix. Oftentimes, just as an FYI for everyone, especially if you're looking at my sheet and you notice that the quarterback who's playing is not the one listed, a lot of times if it's a quarterback battle, if it's both guys are going to play, they're probably fairly similar, and it's not going to change a lot in the projection. And so that's what we have right now. Of course, Rail, I believe is how you say it, a true freshman, right, coming in. So we're not really expecting him to be great right off the bat necessarily. So however much he plays or not, I'm not expecting great things from quarterback play here, especially from day one. Maybe by the end of the season and next year, things will change. But at least off the bat, we're not gonna say that a true freshman in the Matt Rule's offense is going to be lighting up the scoreboard necessarily. To the one more game here at the 3:30 p.m. time slot, Miami of Ohio and Northwestern. Miami of Ohio made us a bunch of money over the last few years in a couple different ways. We played their unders a lot for a while, both of the last two seasons at different points. We kind of riding them a little bit on the money line, a little bit down the stretch last season, including into conference championship week as a big underdog. We're going to take the 3 points within. This is a coin toss game according to the model. Sideline thinks Miami of Ohio is the better team, not by a ton, but by just enough to offset whatever home field advantage Northwestern has. I mean, they're playing on a lake. I don't know if that gives them better advantage. It might be windy. I don't know about the total in this game, other than if it's going to be a windy day, like nobody's going to be able to pass. It's going to get weird there for the whatever it is, 4 games that they're playing in this weird makeshift thing. I believe this year and next year until they play the games at Wrigley Field down the stretch. We don't know what's going to happen. We're going to take the 3. You could take money line because, Jared, you like taking the 3 over the money line. Why is that?
It's a game that involves, number one, it's a game that involves Miami, Ohio. And so they have, as you can see there from the numbers, a very stout defense. Yep. Northwestern's offense last year definitely, in the context of Florida, I talked about their offense having fits and starts, and I thought that was a bad thing. Northwestern, I would say their offense had fits and starts, and I view that as a good thing because there have been previous years where there were no starts. There were only fits.
That was a lot of Ben Bryant, though, wasn't it?
Could be. And so I just on the whole, I still think that obviously Northwestern doesn't have the best offense. They are capable, but they're just not consistent. I don't know, potentially what they could have done to improve that consistency this year. But what I can hang my hat on is Miami's defense being good. I think this game's going to be fairly low scoring. I didn't look at what Sideline had for the projected total in this game.
41, whether not in the totals for this model. I haven't figured out a way to code in all the different cities. So whether not adjusted, the projection total is 41. The books have it at 39. If there's going to be weather, I would definitely go under. And I haven't looked at the weather at this point, but any sort of crosswind, which might happen coming off that lake, I mean, there won't be very many points at all.
Yeah, and so anytime that you've got a number hung in the upper 30s or the low 40s, I am a sucker for getting a field goal. So mathematically, I don't know what the right answer there is, whether you take the money line or take the points, but it just makes me sleep easier at night when I know that I've got such a low-scoring game and I can get 3 points.
Yeah, we've long kind of said a lot of times this is personal preference. How do you kind of sleep at night better, or maybe how do you enjoy the game better? A lot of sports betting is we talk a lot of this. Sports betting is equal parts having a good model, having an edge. We try to help you do that. The part we can't help you with really is the bankroll management part, how much to put on different things. And that's kind of sometimes, we try to help as much as we can, but that's kind of a learned thing. But the underlying of all that is you got to stay sane, because if you're not staying sane, you're going to lose sight of those first two things. And so part of staying sane is making whatever bet you're most comfortable with. And some people are a little more comfortable saying in a situation like this, we're taking the money line. We know we're not going to win as many, but we like having the same incentives. We like the payout. Some people are going to be more comfortable taking the points, whatever you're more comfortable with in this case. We like taking the points, but I'm kind of like, either one makes a lot of sense, but there won't be a lot of points. I'm not sure there'll be a lot of field goals if there's a lot of wind, but there might be a missed extra point or something too. Someone might win 7-6. Who knows what might happen weather-wise. But again, a big drop-off from quarterback from Northwestern, which was part of why they were so solid last year. Now going to whoever the heck is playing. I've got it listed as Mike Wright. I'm not even sure if he's the guy who's going to play or someone else. But all the quarterbacks there at Northwestern are going to be a big drop-off from Ben Bryant, who was not amazing necessarily, but for Northwestern standards was pretty good. Whereas Brett Gabbert for Miami of Ohio is an above-average quarterback. And so Miami of Ohio having the better quarterback, having the better defense. We think this should be an interesting game, a fun one to watch, an entertaining one, maybe not the most marquee matchup, but an entertaining game, two decent teams. We're going to grab the field goal with Miami of Ohio, a B grade pick according to the model, another B grade here, B plus because we like it. That'll shift us to the 7 p.m. time slot where we are going to come back to a team we've already talked about here a little bit, UNLV. Because I don't know if other people are high on UNLV. I don't watch a lot of other pundits. I don't watch ESPN. I don't watch, what other people are saying. So I'm not sure who's high on who. I don't know if other people are high on this UNLV team. I'm pretty high on them. I think they've got a really good chance to make it back to the Mountain West championship game. Obviously, Boise team's going to be the team to beat in that conference. But I think UNLV might be the second best team there. If not, I think they're the third best team. And that's what they found themselves in last year, where there were three teams kind of all jumbled together there at the top. And I think they can repeat that. I really like this team that they brought back, of course, losing their quarterback. But the guy they're bringing in, I think, can hold his own. I'm not overly high on Houston. I've got UNLV as the better team on this one, winning 63% of the time. Plus odds is a gift. I really think UNLV should be favored, even though on the road I think they're a much better team. Houston, of course, going through a little bit of a rebuild. The best thing they've got going for them is Donovan Smith, but they've lost a lot of the talent that they had last year, and they weren't even that good last year. What's your take on this one?
I am one of those people that is high on UNLV. I think the first thing is Barry Odom as the head coach there, who had some success at Missouri. It's I think rare that you get a Power 5. Like usually when a Power 5 coach goes back down to the G5, it was for a reason. It's because they didn't succeed at the Power 5 level. Barry Odom had a few good years there at Missouri, and I think UNLV did a really good job of hiring a guy like Odom, who I think brought a different type of philosophy to UNLV than probably most of the other UNLV coaches had. I feel like when you were looking at a coach for UNLV, you were like, obviously you want to match the Las Vegas thing. You wanted to have high powered offense and everything. It's like Odom's a defensive guy, and they really kind of changed things up there. But
maybe one of the best offensive coordinators in college football.
That's just what I was going to say.
I'm shocked he did not get a head coaching job this offseason. I was just waiting for it.
Yeah. Brennan Marion and the go-go offense. When you've got other at that level, at the G5 level, excuse me, is it G5? Is it G4 now? I don't even know.
When is the Pac-12 a conference? If a tree falls in the woods, is anyone here? Right? I don't know.
Yeah. when you're at that level of FBS football, a coordinator, an innovative and unique coordinator like that can make such a huge difference. And they have that in Brennan Marion, who I think is one of the best offense coordinators in college football. When you've got the big FBS schools and you've got the NFL guys coming to watch what you're doing on offense, it kind of shows that you're doing something well. I am very high on this UNLV team. I think their offense is very unique. It's good. Their defense is good enough, especially against the competition. Am I high on the future of Houston, yes. I think Willie Fritz was a great hire for them.
Yep.
The thing about Fritz, though, is he doesn't come in and turn things around right away. It's not a
He's got
year
a
one
system.
thing. And he usually
And
takes
folks, we're well aware of this. I was at Sam Houston as a graduate student, actually. So
Yeah.
very familiar with Willie Fritz's work at Sam Houston,
Yep.
where he made them a powerhouse, and they still are to this day in the FCS ranks before moving up here this last year to the FBS.
Yep.
But yeah, what he did there, what he did at Tulane was incredible. But like you said, it was not an overnight thing. It was, he's got a system, he's got a process, he's got to get things going his direction.
And maybe most importantly, what he did at Georgia Southern he did the same thing at Georgia Southern between both of those stops. And so I think I'm going to be high on Houston long term. Come back to me at the beginning of next year and let's see how this conversation goes. But right now, I think that UNLV is kind of rounding into form, and I think Houston has got a lot of change and a lot of work to do to get to where I have full confidence that Willie Fritz will get them to be competitive in the Big 12. I just don't think it's going to be this year. They could definitely have some bumps in the road this year. So I think these are just two teams catching each other at the wrong time, where I think UNLV, to me, has a much higher ceiling than Houston does this year.
Yeah, the quarterback for UNLV, Williams, is a kid from Campbell. Freshman year, threw for over 2,000 yards and ran for over 600. He was run less as his career has progressed. I have to assume that's because, we're trying to stay healthy and that sort of thing. And so it'll be interesting to see how much he runs here with UNLV. He clearly has the ability to run. His freshman year, he carried the ball 151 times, and he still threw it 260. So it wasn't like it was just all running. But that's a heck of a lot of runs. Even last year, he still had 90 carries. Now that's probably, its sacks are built into that, so it's exaggerated. But it's still running the ball a decent bit. So he's got some legs, got a great arm. Every full season he's thrown for over 2,000 yards. Model's very high on him coming in, especially given the coordinator situation, which really matters. According to Sideline, we track these things. And when you've got a defensive-minded coach who brings in an offensive coordinator who's fantastic, he can do his thing, it's a heck of a combination. And I think they've got something special there in UNLV, for the time being. I presume next year he'll be, gone, and that'll change things, but at least for this year, got to be a pretty good year, I think, for UNLV. Plus 110 is an A-grade pick there. Speaking of Sam Houston, they are playing down the road in Rice. Many of you, I don't know if you know this, Sam Houston, in Huntsville, Texas, not in Houston, but an hour up the road. They will travel down to Rice. This is a big game for them, playing one of the big boys. They used to always play a Rice or a Houston or someone like that when they were in FCS, and they always got up for those games, and they typically did not have the talent to compete. I think they got a chance to compete in this one. Sam Houston last year lost a bunch of games by one score. They hung around in so many of them, and I don't see why they can't do the same thing here. Sideline has this as Rice by about 2.5. As you can see, Rice is a slightly better team. We're not going to give Rice very much in terms of home field, though. They're not really going to get a huge boost. There's not a lot of crowd presence there in Rice. Rice is a better offense, but a weaker defense. Sam Houston's just kind of overall, not a great FBS team, but they play a style of football that allows them to hang around, it seems like, just about every game, even against better teams. I'm not sure Rice is that much better. I'm not sure why we're getting 10 points, Cousin Jared. Plus 10 is an A-grade pick from the model. We think that Rice wins this 57% of the time. Is it worth a little bit of a sprinkle on the money line to see if Sam Houston can finally get on the right side of winning, or do you need to see them prove that first, given all the close losses they had last year?
I think a sprinkle on the money line is appropriate here. It's not like we're asking them to. Well, okay, so taking the 10 points, it just seems obvious. Like I love this play. Sam Houston seemed incapable of not playing a close game last year, regardless of what their win-loss record was. They just almost every game was close. Rice, overall, you've got Rice 99, Houston 105. I don't know how you get 10 points from that. No matter how you cut it, even if you were off and you say, let's say Sam Houston's 110 and Rice is 90, it still doesn't matter there. 10 points is too good to pass up. I think Rice has shown over the years they can lose just about any type of game. Not that they will; they've been better lately, but
they can win a bunch of random weird games too. We've seen a bunch of weird things from Rice football, to be honest.
Yeah, and so I think another way of what we're saying, there could be some variance in this game, and so I think that is when a sprinkle on the money line would be appropriate. I did not go to Rice or Sam Houston, but I do live in the Houston area. There will be more Sam Houston fans at this game than Rice fans.
Much bigger school, much bigger alum base in Houston for Sam Houston and Rice.
Yes, and so I would almost say there should be no home field advantage. They know where the bathrooms are. Like
the travel,
okay.
Keeping your normal hotel, because I guess they travel if you're home, you still go to your own hotel. But
depending on what time you're coming down I-45, you can get stuck in traffic. From Huntsville. So there's that. But I love Sam Houston.
It's a short trip.
I think this is way too many points, and I think a sprinkle on the money line. You could do worse.
This is we're kind of entering a little bit of a stretch here, folks. I guess the last four picks, and the next one as well are picks that we both like. We both really like this one. I don't understand this line. We can go through the X's and O's of the players. The thing that I want to talk about a little bit real quick before we move on is Sam Houston's close games last year. In case you missed it, viewer, in non-conference they did get blown out at Houston. And that was, a Houston team that's was up and down last year, but we'll throw that one out as a weird game. They lost to Air Force by 10. And Air Force was a really good team at the start of the season last year. They lost at BYU by 14 in a game they were underdogs by like 28 or something. They played Jacksonville State, took them into overtime, only lost by 7. Jacksonville State was one of the better teams in the conference, only lost by 7 in overtime. They lost at Liberty by 5. Now they also lost at home to UTEP by a field goal. But that was kind of the point. They played in just about every game. They did lose by 14 at New Mexico State. But otherwise, when you look at it, it's, either they won big over Louisiana Tech. They finally did get off the schneid and beat Kennesaw State. They lost by 5 at Western Kentucky. They beat Middle Tennessee by a field goal. It's so many one-score games, close games. They weren't on the right side of many of them until towards the end, where they did finish winning 3 of 4. I don't know what's going to happen. This should be a tight contest,
And how different is Rice from all of the other teams that you just mentioned that Sam Houston hung in there with?
Yes, because many of those teams had some great weeks where they looked really good, and then had some weeks where they really struggled. So absolutely, I think it's a pretty good comparison. We're going to take the 10, maybe sprinkle a little bit on the money line here on Sam Houston State. Usually in Hawaii, because this is, of all the games, the one game that the projection made me question my sanity. We say often in statistics that all models are wrong and some models are useful, right? So we'll get that out of the way. I'll say off the bat, we're an hour and 15 into this show, so it's not really off the bat. Sideline's wrong. It is. There's no way that if these two teams played 100 times that UCLA would actually win by an average of 0.4. They might win by 0.3, or they might win by 10.4 or 20.4, or who knows what. It isn't 0.4. I know that much. The model's wrong. I don't even know where to go with this one. I know the model is low on UCLA. I know the model is really high on Hawaii. Am I getting a little bit of island fever here, having Hawaii up at a nice number 69? That is incredible. They already played a game. I don't know if that matters necessarily. Maybe, maybe not. I think you can kind of look at it in a couple of different ways. Traveling out to the island, though, is tough. You do get a little bit of an extra boost for Hawaii there. It's obviously a tough place to play at because the travel is just so weird on the body. I think UCLA is a better team. I don't know why they're favored by double digits. This was 14 earlier, which was bonkers. It's still 13.5. Still an easy A grade. Another game where I think take the points and sprinkle on the money line. Like, it's not an island special. It's a 7:30 p.m. Eastern start, so it's an afternoon start out there on the island. I could be wrong here, but Hawaii started to look better as the season went along last year. We got a coach we like, and maybe things are going in the right direction for them. I don't know. What's your take on this one? Am I crazy is the model completely crazy to think this might be a 50-50 type game?
So I think the model is a little bit crazy. that it could be a 50-50 type game, but the beauty of getting 13.5 points is it doesn't have to be a 50-50 game. So I'd like to be wrong, and there's still a lot of value there. And we talked about the travel from Sam Houston, the Rice, that not applicable to Hawaii,
very different
even from the West Coast. Very, very different travel spot.
They haven't built that highway yet.
Yeah, for me, the infrastructure would be very difficult there. Getting the road, the stuff to make the road there. So for me, I agree with everything you said about Hawaii. Showing promise. Our boy Timmy Chang knows what it takes to be successful out there. We talked a little bit earlier about Miami, Ohio, and Northwestern playing on a lake. For like the third year, Hawaii is still playing in a parking lot. So I don't that's a home field advantage. It's an advantage of some sort. I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe. But for me, for me, this is more about UCLA. I am concerned, not just because of the move to the Big Ten and what their schedule looks like this year, just being a little bit tougher than what was in the former Pac-12, but Chip Kelly.
I was going to say, are we going to talk about Chip Kelly? Because that was one of the – there's been a couple others, but this is at the top one of these weird situations.
Yeah. So Chip Kelly leaving when he did, really setting UCLA in a bind, which I'm glad that Deshaun Foster got the job.
Seems to be a good fit.
I don't think, especially at the time, you could have done any better than what you did there. But they had some transfers out. They lost Dante Moore, transferred to Oregon, who was one of the quarterbacks that played a lot last year. And I think that one thing you can say about Chip Kelly is he had a specific way that he did things. He had a very specific way that he wanted to recruit. It was I think you would probably be hard pressed to come up with a Power 5 job that was more tailored, the team being tailored to what the coach wanted from a personnel perspective and everything.
What Chip Kelly had. Triple option team.
Yeah. And so I may have said Power 5, Power 4, whatever. None of them run the triple option. So that's where I'm going with this.
Someone should. Vanderbilt should. Why not?
But we will never be able to convince them to do that. I just think it is going to be a transition year for UCLA, and it is going to be tough. And especially, Big Ten games and all that stuff. I think they're going to have a really tough time in conference, but I think that is going to extend to games like this. I just don't know if they have the players or the coaching. I mean, again, I think Deshaun Foster is a good fit. How is he going to be as a coach? I do not know. I have so many questions about UCLA and a tough travel spot going up against a team in Hawaii that I think is on the rise relative to Hawaii. And so I just think this is too many points to pass up for Hawaii at home against a team that I have so many questions about in UCLA.
By all accounts, Deshaun Foster is going to be a really good head coach. Everybody raves about him. It kind of reminds me of D'Amico Ryans. The same thing where everybody raved about him, and I'm just hearing a lot of the same things about. And it's from every angle. It's that the players love him, people in the kind of the front office type thing. They respect the work he does. It's like everybody seems to like him every direction, and you have guys like that are younger that really can connect the players, and it seems like they're going to be really successful. And of course, you saw with D'Amico Ryans, it was an incredible job, of course, with the Texans.
Yep.
I think he kind of caught lightning in a bottle there because he had a pretty dang good quarterback who turned out to be really good on day one. He had like 3 insanely good wide receivers. I said from the start of the season last year, I was on record of saying this. If you want to go back and watch it, you can from the week 1, week 2, whatever the first time we talked about the Texans was. They had a lot of talent last year. They didn't have a lot of depth. If they were injured and they weren't necessarily healthy from the start, they were going to be in trouble. But if they could stay healthy, they had some talent on that team. And then everything got right with again, having a quarterback who just turned out to be insanely good and a couple receivers, make some leaps. I'm like, I don't think you're going to see that at UCLA. The quarterback there, Ethan Garbers, we saw him last year, and it was bad. I mean, and it wasn't like anybody else was better necessarily. They were all bad last year, but I'm just not sure, he's going to have success there. I'm like you. I think it's going to be more of a rebuild type thing. I think he'll be fine in the future. I'm optimistic about UCLA's future. I'm like you. I don't think it's going to be this year. I could be wrong, and if he does great things with them this year, then I'll admit I was wrong on that. But I'm just very concerned that this is going to be a tough season for them. That doesn't mean they can't win this game by 35. They have better athletes in Hawaii, absolutely. But when you look at some of the, positional breakdowns, when you look at what some of the things they do in Hawaii, obviously not a great run team, but they've got decent pass blocking according to the model. They've got a pretty good quarterback in Braden Shager who looked really good last year. I didn't watch any of the game this year because it was so late, and against Delaware State, I didn't really think that was going to help us. Yeah. It wasn't going to help us, scouting of any sort. But I think I got the better quarterback. They might have the better offensive line from a pass blocking standpoint. UCLA doesn't look like they're going to be able to run the ball very well necessarily from a run blocking standpoint. I'm just not sure this sets up for UCLA to really dominate. Hawaii should be able to put up some points. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not so sure it's a 50-50 game. I still think UCLA is probably more 60-40, but getting 13.5, I think Hawaii can hang in there. I like a sprinkle on the money line here just because it would not surprise me if Hawaii wins this game. I'm really optimistic about them this year. I think they make a bowl game. I like what I've seen from them here. So we're gonna get some Island Fever and back the Rainbow Warriors. Your A-grade pick grabbing the, again, 13.5. 8 p.m. Eastern, Georgia State and Georgia Tech. And, we got, 6 games to go. We're going to stay under 2 hours, but it's probably closer to 2 than we were before. I have a lot of things to say about this. I have a lot of things about Georgia Tech, Florida State. We'll talk about the Florida State game later.
Yeah.
I wonder if that Florida State game, I already mentioned this. I'm concerned about Florida State's offensive and defensive line. I'm concerned about them for that reason from can they compete for the playoff? Can they compete for the ACC? I wonder if that game said more about Georgia Tech than Florida State. Georgia Tech was a team last year, like I mentioned about Virginia Tech. The model was not high on. They kept overperforming, and the model just was like rapidly trying to catch up as the season went along, being like, okay, you're better than I realized. We'll bump you. They just continued on the right direction. Everything's looking up for them. I'm not saying they're a top 10 team. According to Southern, they're number 44. I really liked what I saw from them. That said, they are 21-point favorites here. In-state rivalry game, letdown spot coming back, weird time zone lag coming back. We're staying away from the side. We're going to take the under 56, B-plus grade. Models projecting 53.5. Of note, there were no possessions in that Georgia Tech Florida State game. And Georgia State might want to go a little bit faster than Florida State. They do, but Georgia Tech really found a way to limit the number of possessions. I'm not sure if that's going to be their style necessarily that extreme, but if there is any bit of that's the way they're going to play football this year, and that's what gives them the best chance they think to win games, there's no way this game gets to 50 if there's any sort of that same sort of pace thing happening. Even if there isn't, Georgia Tech still got a really good defense and should win this handily, but it's hard to see Georgia State scoring enough to get up to 56. We talked about a lot already. 55 is your key number here. So 56, 55.5 under that makes a lot of sense. Because Jared, what's your take on this one?
For me, this is easy. Georgia Tech, the hangover spot against a team like Georgia State coming back from Ireland after the big win, 100% a hangover spot for Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
Easily see them kind of getting off to a slow start. I think this is maybe more than that. This is about Georgia State. We just talked about UCLA and how weird the Chip Kelly thing was when he took the OC job at Ohio State. I think there may have been only one job that opened after the UCLA job, and that was the Georgia State job. Del McGee was named their head coach on February 23rd. So, it was super late in the cycle. Recruiting had already been done. No opportunity to kind of evaluate the roster or anything
for spring stuff. It's already done, right? Everyone's already there.
Yeah. He probably had his press conference, and then how much of his coaching staff did he even have in place when they started spring ball and everything?
Yeah.
And at that point, all the other coaching carousel moves had happened and everything. I think, and not an indictment at all of Del McGee's coaching ability, but I don't think anything you see from Georgia State this year matters. Yeah. I think that they were put in. Yes. You're -1, whatever it wants to be. This is the absolute worst situation you can find yourself in. I have no expectations of Georgia State this year, but because of that. And so for me, it's a combination of hangover from Georgia Tech. I have no expectations from Georgia State this year. And so if I can go, sideline thinks that there's an edge toward the under here, and I can go under a key number like 55. I'm getting 56 or whatever it is here. I love this one for all of those reasons.
Yeah, B grade according to the model, a small edge, but again, the model isn't taking into consideration. It's a very complex model, but it is not considering the travel distance. That's usually not a thing, so I haven't built that into the model. I do build it into the baseball model because they play every day, and so if you're playing, at 7 p.m. on one coast and you're playing at 9 p.m. on the other coast the next day, right? That matters.
Yeah.
But for football, that typically doesn't matter, but here it kind of does. So that's not built into the model. So only a B grade from the model, which doesn't know quite the letdown spot and the weird travel spot. Georgia State remotivated. A lot of times that motivation comes out more on the defensive side of the ball with that intensity. So a lot of reasons we like the under 56. This one's gotten weird already. I told everyone on Discord, I set up the projection. So if you saw the projections, you already knew it. I told everyone on Discord as it was going up, grab James Madison at 6.5, grab it at 7. We're hearing that Charlotte is down even more players than the model realizes from some injuries in spring practice. Seems like they went a little bit too hard. They have some injuries. They don't have a lot of depth. Charlotte brought back a decent number of players. They had some promise last year. I think they're going in the right direction as a program. Because we have not discussed yet NCAA football 2024, but one of the things that if you view or have played or know anything about it that has been talked about, one of the differences between this current version and the previous versions is that when you take a small school, it is hard to get good right away. They've made it difficult. And I think that's what we're seeing here at Charlotte. I think they're going in the right direction. I think it's going to take a long time here for that to take place. Apparently the video games got that down. Back in the day, you used to be able to be the head coach at Akron and, year 2, you could play for the national title. And that's not going to happen in this new video game. It's much more realistic. And so it's going to be a long process at Charlotte. They don't have a lot of depth. These injuries are bad. James Madison, very much down on them overall from how good they were last season. They've lost a lot. That said, they're still going to be a decent team. They're still going to be okay. And Charlotte right now is really hurting. It's up to 9. We're still laying the 9. It is still an A grade according to the model, which says this should be James Madison by 16. What are your thoughts on this one, Cousin Jared?
James Madison is the updated version of App State. Because they do very, very well at the FCS level. They come up to FBS, and it's like they don't miss a beat at all. And I know that Signetti is gone. They had some transfers. McLeod, I think, is at Texas State now. But clearly, James Madison, when they were at the FCS level, had an infrastructure to be successful. Now at the FBS level, I think they have an infrastructure to be successful. And I mean, it may be, well, not my favorite football conference. My favorite football conference always will be the Mountain West. Just got a special place in my heart for the Mountain West, but maybe giving them a run for their money is the Sun Belt. And the Sun Belt is just good football basically everywhere that you look. And I think just the level that the top of the Sun Belt plays against the bottom of the, I think Charlotte's in the AAC now. I think just the bottom of the AAC is just not what the top of the Sun Belt is. And even if you want to say James Madison now is in the middle of the Sun Belt, maybe you can make that argument with everything that they lost. But still, the middle of the Sun Belt, still much better than the bottom of what is now the AAC. So I think that's going to show up on Saturday when these two teams get on the field, and you're just saying, man, the Sun Belt, pretty salty.
It is a very good football conference. James Madison needs this win for bowl eligibility, which I can't believe I'm saying after going 12-1 or whatever it was in the regular season, 11-1 in the regular season last year. They'll have Gardner-Webb, probably an easy win. Louisiana Monroe, maybe a little bit weaker. If they get Ball State, that'll be a decent win. I'm not sure there's another easy win left. Maybe home against Southern Miss. But the Southern Belt is tough. A lot of these games are tough games. At Georgia Southern, they have to play at UNC, at App State, at Old Dominion, who got frisky at the end of last year. Coastal Carolina, they got a bunch of teams in the Sun Belt who are all decent. and anybody can beat anybody. And somebody's going to get left out of the bowl picture in the Sun Belt who's a good team. Somebody's going to finish 5-7. Same thing's happened in the Big 12. Same thing's happened in the Big 10 and the SEC. Someone's going to finish 5-7. You're going to say, the team was actually pretty decent, but they just happen to lose a bunch of close games, right? So James Madison's going. They know they got to win this game. They're looking for everyone they can. Obviously, they have their hopes on something like 10 wins. I think they lost too much to reach that. I think they're again dropped down to more the middle of the Sun Belt after dominating it for most of last season. But they're still a decent team. Like you said, even the middle of the Sun Belt is still a pretty solid conference. Probably the best G, whatever number we're calling it now, of a lot of depth, a lot of good teams, and we really think it's going to be on display. So Landon and I with James Madison, again, model think 16, so it's been bet up. Still like it here. Obviously, if you were with us on Discord, we told you to hurry up and run. You got 6.5 or 7, even better. But still like 9 is fine. 8 great from the model. New Mexico and Arizona. Because I think this is the part of the show where we get weird. 10:30, so we are now to the after dark. We have 2 after dark games. We're going to take the 30.5. We're going to take the dog. Take 30.5 points with New Mexico and Devin Dampier, who really had a great chance for a marquee win against a really good FCS school and just Heartbreak City blew it in week 0 against an Arizona team that Noah Fafita, very good, really high on him. Everything else at Arizona, big question marks after their coaching situation, losing their head coach to Washington. They lost some dudes. And I still think Arizona is going to be a good team. I think they had a potential, if they were able to keep their coach, to be more of a top 20, top 15 type team. I think they're going to be good. I'm not sure if they're going to be great. New Mexico up to number 102. Their offense looking, again, Devin Dampier, we saw him at the end of last year. He played 2 games maybe at the end of last year. One of them, he ran wild over Utah State. I don't know who it was, for like 5 touchdowns or something like that. Looked pretty good. And we think they can hang in there. Arizona has no reason to run away with this game. New Mexico tends to play with a slower pace, bringing the total number of points down. We're projecting this to be an average of 40-16 that New Mexico loses by about 24. So 30.5 gets us a win there. Big dog here on a late Saturday night game. Hopefully it gets a little bit weird for us, right?
Yeah, Bronco Mendenhall, now the head coach at New Mexico. And if they're like Bronco Mendenhall, just their teams are just solid. Like they just don't beat themselves. They maximize what they have. He did a lot with, I would say, like a medium amount at BYU, and he did, looking back at it now, maybe more with less at Virginia than what he had at BYU, considering kind of how they went. Virginia went over the cliff once he left. I think that Mendenhall is exactly what the doctor ordered for a team like New Mexico. And are they going to lose a lot of games this year? Yeah. I mean, look at what they did with Montana State. Gave up 21 unanswered points in the fourth quarter and lost to,
to a run first team.
Yeah, to a run first team, a very good FCS team, but still an FCS team nonetheless.
Arizona's a lot better.
Yeah, New Mexico is not going to win this game, but I think they can keep it as Lee Corso would say, closer than the experts think. I think they're going to lose this one by 24. That feels right. I think that they're going to
21, 24, 27, 28.
We saw their ability to create turnovers, get points off those turnovers in that game against Montana State. That's really all we need. We need one big defensive play, set up a short field for the opponent. Set up a short field for our offense, return a punt, get an interception in the end zone. Like, I think we just need like 1 or 2 things that a Bronco Mendenhall team can do that will get us the cover in this one.
He played the last 3. He played some opposite. He played the last 3 games. Dampier did for New Mexico. At a loss to Boise, he threw for 200 yards. Led them to a win over Fresno State. And what was surprising, even though Fresno State had some injury issues at quarterback, was still very surprising that they won at Fresno State and then lost to Utah State in double overtime in a game that he ran for 2 touchdowns and threw for another. Really gave them a spark last year and took New Mexico from dreadful to they're maybe half competent. And again, now with an extra offseason under his belt, with a new coach, you saw it there in that first game, threw for almost 200 yards, threw for a touchdown, ran for a touchdown. Again, competency at quarterback for New Mexico, which is something you can't often say. They've been so bad for so long. Again, a little bit of respectability with the head coach. They're not good. They're going to lose a lot of games. But I think this number's inflated a little bit. And Arizona is good enough. They have the talent. They can win by 50. I'm not sure week one, all the pieces are there, all the transfers, all the guys in and out. In general, I think this number's a little bit inflated because everyone saw how New Mexico blew that game. And they're thinking, if they blew that game against Montana State, what's Arizona going to do? Arizona's a lot better than Montana State. I agree with that. But New Mexico covered.
Yep.
And that's all that matters, folks. Remember, good teams win, great teams cover. So we're going to take the points with New Mexico. The other late game, also involving a team from the Sun Devil State. I don't know. I'm just making that up. Is that right? The Sun Devils. The Sunshine State? I don't know. That's Florida. Arizona State. Someone correct me on that, whatever the state is. Arizona State and Wyoming. Wyoming, of course, losing the head coach after so many years. It sounds like they're going to kind of try to do the same thing. Nothing's really changed there. Strong defense, slow pace, a lot of continuity there. Arizona State had some issues last year, had some depth issues last year. How much better is that going to get this year? Because we were talking about this before the show. I don't know the answer. If Arizona State loses this game, they might go 0-12. When you look at the schedule, I'm not sure they're going to be favored in another game this season. This might be their one chance for a win. We're going to take Wyoming plus 200 on the money line. Model says they win 57% of the time. I think this is not only a wrong team favored game. I think this is a little bit too much respect to Arizona State's in the Big 12. Wyoming lost their coach. I think Wyoming's actually got a decent bit of continuity there. Arizona State, I think in the long run, they might be okay. I'm not sure it's this year. I think it's going to be a rough year. I think it starts off rough week one. What's your take on
it? My take on it is that Wyoming, if you're an Arizona State fan, I think that Wyoming is like the last team that you want to see on opening weekend. Obviously, if you're Arizona State, you want to open up the season with a win. But I think
it's the last mediocre team you want to see. Obviously, you don't want to see like Georgia, right? But yes, if you're playing a team that you're favored against, it's the last team you want to be favored against.
Yeah. If you're playing the classic week one opponent, Wyoming is the last one that you want. Because if you're Arizona State, you need all the help you can get. And Wyoming is not going to provide any of that help. Mm-hmm. They are going to run the ball. They're going to run the ball. They're going to play tough defense. They're going to convert fourth and short. That's going to be backbreaking. It's just Wyoming is going to do
run
what
a fake
Wyoming
punt or
does.
Something at the perfect time.
Yes, and some people may know this, but if you didn't, you could look at Wyoming. You could be like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of the coaching tree from Wyoming came from North Dakota State. Craig Bowl was the head coach of North Dakota State once upon a time, was the head coach at Wyoming for 10 years. He retired. They brought in somebody else. It's the defensive coordinator that's been at Wyoming with him for the past few years. Yep. There is going to be nothing that changes about Wyoming. A lot of continuity there. I don't.
And you talked earlier about James Madison, App State. North Dakota State's the same thing with that. With this guy coming to Wyoming now, it's the same thing with these building an infrastructure. These guys who know how to build a program and make it legit at the FCS level when they bring them up, or in this case, go to a different school, like I said, they know what they're doing. They build it right, and that way when they leave, what's left behind is still pretty solid.
Yep. And that infrastructure, I don't think it's there with Arizona State yet. Could it get there in a couple of years? Maybe. Sure. But I don't think it's going to be this year. And I think there's too much value at plus 200. Knowing how Wyoming's going to play, you know exactly what they're going to get. And I feel like on the Arizona State side, potentially a lot of variability there. And I just think plus 200 is a gift whenever you could get a crazy outcome. And this Wyoming could run it down their throat and win this game 21-10 or something like that. So
we saw last year in the non-conference, Wyoming really should have beat Tech in Lubbock, which is notoriously a very tough place. Or did they win? It went to overtime. I can't remember exactly how it played out. And so that was a much tougher challenge than this will be. And so you absolutely, they have the pedigree, obviously, setting the exact same players, a lot of the same players, a lot of continuity there. We also saw last year Arizona State, at the start of the season, week 1, barely beat Southern Utah. They only won by a field goal at home. Wyoming's a lot better than Southern Utah. We saw them get just absolutely destroyed by Oklahoma State, who had someone like no rushing yards in like the entire half or whatever that was.
That was when Oklahoma State was lost.
They had no rushing yards in the first half and still won by 12.
They got crushed by South Alabama the week before or after that. Oklahoma State was not good at that point in time.
And then they figured it out. But then the next week, Arizona State lost at home 29-zip to Fresno. And Fresno got a lot of turnovers. But Wyoming's a team that's going to put themselves in position to get turnovers. Doesn't mean they'll happen. You never know. But it's the same. Wyoming's kind of like that same sort of team. So is Arizona State can be better this year? Absolutely. I do think so. I think that some of their depth issues are going to be solved. I think they're kind of on the rise in general. But it's because it was from such a low. They're on the rise. I still think that they're going to struggle this year. I think Wyoming's the better team. And again, we saw them succeed on the road last year, do really well in tough situations. We saw Arizona State struggle at home last year in the non-conference. Plus 200 offers us a lot of value. A-grade pick. 2 games to go. Sunday night, LSU and Southern Cal. This game is in Nevada. We're going to be in the under 64.5. Your key number in the 60s would be 65, so we would like 65. More than 64.5. Model thinks at 62, which is also a key number. 61 is a key number. That's probably where it should be priced at. Both these offenses project to be really good. I have a lot of questions about both offenses, though, because USC lost a very good quarterback. LSU lost a very good quarterback and a very good wide receiver. Southern Cal lost a very good wide receiver as well. A lot of questions coming in week 1. Is everything going to be gelling? Are they going to be able to put up the points? It could, if this game's happening in a month, everything's clicking, or even now in week 1, could be fireworks, could be a wild, fun game. But there's a lot of question marks on these offenses at the skill positions. So we're going to go under 64.5. Because Jared, give us your take.
So I agree with what you said about LSU there. Lost a lot offensively. There's just no way that Garrett Nussmeier can match what Jaden Daniels did last year. When was the last time that Lincoln Riley had a quarterback with the pedigree of Miller Moss?
I'm going to say like every other year, basically.
Well, okay. Well, is that true? Because I feel like Riley has just had a run of great quarterbacks. And now cause and effect, right? Whatever you statistical people say. Is that because of Riley? He had a lot of good quarterbacks.
He did.
Miller Moss could turn into a great quarterback. Or what if he just ends up being above average? What does a Lincoln Riley offense look like if he has a quarterback that is just above average? I'm going to guess probably still pretty good. But the total in this game is set like they're going to have a really good quarterback. The other thing that I am excited to see is D'Anton Lynn was hired as the defense coordinator at USC, coming from UCLA. UCLA had a salty defense last year. Tons of issues on offense. But man, was that
no issues on defense.
Yeah, the UCLA defense was so good. And the fact that Riley finally let go of Alex Grinch, which everybody had been asking him to do since I think probably before he left Oklahoma. And the fact that we have somebody who was in literally the same city was recruiting the specific type of players. We talked about how, Chip Kelly tailored his team exactly to what he wanted. Somehow D'Anton Lynn found a way to, match that perfectly with a defensive scheme at UCLA and have a lot of success on the defensive side of the ball. I'm very excited to see what this USC defense could be this year, because you would think a Lincoln Riley team that has a decent defense, we've been saying this for a decade now, would have to be pretty good. So I'm excited about that. LSU's defense has to be better, I think. I don't know. Can't be much worse than how they played at times last year. So I just think that like these two offenses are both going to take a step back, and I think both defenses are going to take a step forward. And man, this is a lot of points for a week one game. This is a lot of points to get.
Yeah, and I think this number's a little bit inflated. Again, Sundance got it at 62. I kind of think it should be more like 58. If I was setting the number, in that I think this number is inflated because people are thinking about last year and saying, "Oh, I saw LSU play last year. I saw USC play last year. This game's going to have 70 points," and so they're just over. I'm just like I'm like you. I think both these offense take a step back, defense take a step forward. I think brings us back down to earth. This is one we wait on probably. No reason to run to lock in 64.5.
No.
I think this gets bet up probably. I think people are going to be thinking about last year. Totals on average tend to get bet up, not always, of course. If it was the Nebraska Iowa situation from last year, very different. But I wouldn't be surprised if this gets 65, maybe even 65.5, and that's a key number. So I would hold off on this and just see if you can wait out. Keep an eye on it. You don't want to let it get below 62.5. But I think the under can make a lot of sense here. To your point about Lincoln Riley in the offense, I would have answered Jalen Hurts based off if you asked me the question at the time.
Yeah.
And then Jalen Hurts had a great year at Oklahoma, and it was like, yeah, but it's Lincoln Riley. It's the fact that Oklahoma had playmakers, whatever. And then Jalen Hurts went on to be a very good NFL quarterback. And so now it's like, oh, maybe that was just wrong. Maybe that's not right at all. So I think it's a tough question to answer, really. Miller Moss, I think seems to be decent, but how good is he going to be? I don't know.
Well, and I think the right answer to the question was we had no way. I know Baker Mayfield played some at Tech, but I don't feel like he played a ton. I feel like, of course, there were a lot of unknowns whenever he was named the starter at Oklahoma. So I think that would probably be who I would have said. And so it's like, what are the odds that Miller Moss turns into Baker Mayfield? And it's like,
And that Oklahoma team was benefited because that defense was a lot better as well. And I think USC's defense will get better this year, but that Oklahoma defense was very good that year, which always helps when you're putting your quarterback in better situations. The other thing of note about the USC offense, maybe something to consider, had a quarterback battle between Miller Moss and the hotshot freshman, I can't remember his name right now, who ended up transferring to Boise State.
Yeah.
Malachi Moss Nelson, winning that job maybe said something. And then the kid at Boise State isn't even named the starter. And the guy who played last year, who was very okay, is named the starter. So maybe he wasn't that good. Going back to maybe that doesn't tell us anything about Miller Moss. Just something I've been kind of thinking about that, like, had he been named the starter, that's a very different story. But like, he lost that job and then he lost this other one. Is like, maybe he didn't really have as much competition as we would have liked to have made it out to be because of the hotshot recruiting process there. So just kind of some food for thought there about quarterbacks. One last game here, and then I do want to look back to one other game to get your thoughts on after that. So
are we sure? Do I have to?
You have to. Yes, you do have to. We're almost 2 hours in. So if anybody's around, they have to get your thoughts on this one. Before we get to that, though, Boston College, Florida State. Obviously, Florida State, again, we talk about their offensive line having issues. Playing a much weaker Boston College team, coming back from overseas, can be a little bit weird with the time zone. However, not a hangover spot because you're not, pumped off of such a big win. Hangover in a different direction, I guess. That's the old adage, right? You can drink when you're happy and drink when you're sad. Sideline still got this Florida State by about 24. We're going to like 15.5. A-grade pick from the model. I don't think this is much about anything other than Boston College, new coach year one, not sure things are going to get off to the right start. Florida State coming in pissed off, should take care of business at home. I think this is a buy low spot on Florida State. I could be wrong. If they barely eke this one out, it might be a really long year in Tallahassee. But I still think they're a decent enough team. Still think they're okay. Might win the ACC still. Might not. But I just think they're a much better team. And I love buying low. I love buying low and selling high. And so we're going to lay it with Florida State. What's your take?
So when I said our boy DJ had some issues over the years, that is true. I'm not sure if the number 87 ranked defense qualifies as one of the teams that would give him issues. I think
because he looks decent against bad defenses.
Yeah, and I think that this Boston College defense is nothing to write home about. I also think it's probably telling that Jeff Hafley left to go be the DC in the NFL. Yeah, I mean, 100%. You can make all the reasons why a coach would want to leave college football to go to the NFL, but I think Hafley had his time there, been there for 5 or 6 years, and he was kind of like, I think this kind of is what it is. And going to be tough to turn this
By
around.
all accounts, took everybody by surprise there as well, which is never a good sign.
No. And so Bill O'Brien, is he the right person for that part of the country? Probably so. But yeah. I just think it's going to be tough sledding. Boston College, they had kind of hung on. They were 4 and 5 wins a year because they had a lot of continuity from Hafley being there for so long. Even if they were underachieving, there's a lot of continuity. I think blowing up that continuity, Boston College could be in a rough season, and for a rough season this year. Could in a couple of years they'd be back to 5 or 6 wins? Sure. I don't think it's going to be this season. Man, yeah. If Florida State wins a super close game or manages to lose, man, that it's like everything. I thought about this the other day. We had just forgotten that there was, like, back when it was Twitter, they had the whole like fire Mike Norvell space that became like a viral sensation, and there were like tens of thousands of people that joined the fire Mike Norvell space. I was just thinking today, like, how quickly we forget things. That one 12-0, 13-0 season, you just forget about that, and then you come back and lose the next game. You're like, oh yeah, they wanted to get rid of Mike Norvell like 18 months ago. So anyway, just things change quick in college football.
Things do change. Obviously, last year, Florida State struggled with Boston College, eking out a win, almost blowing it. That's got to be in their minds. So all the motivation in the world for Florida State after last week, after last year, that was one of the special games for Boston College, honoring, I don't remember the specifics, but that was a big thing for them. Really, again, this is just all about a buy low, better team. Let's take care of business, and if they don't, they don't. But sometimes you just got to take advantage of a soft number, and that's what we think this is. So laying the 15.5 with BC, A grade. The under in the last game, of course, was a B grade. I don't know if I mentioned that. Last but not least, we got to get your thoughts here. The other big game Saturday night, Notre Dame and Texas A&M. Model would lean Notre Dame. Kind of leaning more of a coin toss type situation. But your Texas A&M Fighting Aggies are big favorites. Interesting situation here. We were talking about this offline, that the model is a little bit low on Connor Wegman. Not that he's not good, but that he only had 4 games last year, and the model's not running to say he's a top 10 quarterback with those 4 games. If he continues to do that going forward, he will absolutely be a top 10 quarterback. But right now has him about as good as Riley Leonard. I'm not sure I'm sold on Notre Dame is the issue that makes me a little bit nervous about taking them and the plus odds. I think both of us looked at this and we both decided to pass. No official pick from us. We don't really love anything here, even though it's, again, one of the bigger games. I think they're baiting you to take Notre Dame, knowing there's value in Notre Dame, but like, can you actually do it? As a Texas A&M alum, Kissinger, what's your take on this one?
No. I'm sure I will. I'm sure I will regret this, but I think the A&M team is going to be pretty good this year, and a lot of that was
great head coaching hire.
Yeah. A lot of that goes back to the head coaching hire, and
we've been high on Elko for years here.
Yeah, and Sumlin was a splash hire. Fisher was a splash hire. Elko, nothing splashy about him. Just a football coach. So I think that's good. I think one aspect of this game that go back. You mentioned Wegman. Wegman, I think he is going to have a good, solid season if he can stay healthy. I think one thing that has been a little bit overlooked in this game, and maybe it hasn't been overlooked. Maybe that's the way the line is the way it is. But if there's one guy who knows how to defend Riley Leonard and what his weaknesses are, it's going to be Mike Elko. I think Notre Dame's
does he know
offense,
him from anywhere? Is there any...
Yeah.
Duke's not involved in this game.
No. Duke's nothing to do with Duke here. I think it's going to be very difficult for Notre Dame's offense to get going in this game. I could say the same thing about A&M. As much hope as I have for the offense this year, definitely like the weakness of this team is the offensive line. Notre Dame's defensive line, very talented as they always are. I think this is going to be a defensive slugfest. Sideline would lean over. There is no way I am playing the over in this game. Unless Colin Klein pulls something out of his rear end that I just don't see coming. I would still play under on this one, but I'm not going to disagree with the sideline. Like I said, we decided to pass on this, but I think this is going to be a low-scoring game that I give A&M the edge because of the familiarity of our head coach with Notre Dame's quarterback.
Yeah, and solid defense from Notre Dame. Number 7 on the pass, number 7 on the run, number 6 overall. I mean, they're just good all the way around. A&M a little bit behind that. I'm curious, I want your take on this one here too, because last year A&M was a very confusing team, and obviously Wegman was a big part of that. But Wegman was in. It was like, hey, this offense is going to be good, and the defense really looked like it took a step back. And then after the Wegman injury, even though Max Johnson was decent, it seemed like the offense started taking a step back. The defense started to look more like its old self. Was that just Jimbo getting back to being Jimbo? What was that about? Because that was a very confusing year. How much of that is just gone? Because it's like, okay, new coach, none of that matters now. Versus what was going on?
Yeah, was it a confusing year, or was the A&M Miami game just an aberration for both teams?
Yeah.
That like we didn't talk about that game necessarily on the list of like really weird results from the season, but looking back,
I think because we think about really weird results about who won the game, not necessarily how the game was played.
Yeah, just go back and look at literally everything about that game was really weird. I don't know who should have won it, but the way that it played out was just completely wrong. I think that a lot of what we perceived from the rest of the season came from that one Miami game being so early in the season and feeling like, oh, hey, look, A&M has an offense this year. What happened to their defense? And then really it was like, no, it was just small sample size. Nothing's changed.
Yeah. All right, I think that's all we've got. We did hit 2 hours. So, Cousin Jared, you win our first bet of the year, I guess. We'll give you 1-0. You have some season win futures bets that you have given or you are going to give our friend Jake. Is that correct? Yes or no?
Yes, I have passed along some of my favorite season-long plays.
All right, Jake is the keeper of those. We were able to do a show last year, multiple shows previewing the season, doing season win bets. It's a lot of fun. We'll try to get back to that next year. All of our lives get a little bit crazy because, Jared, you moved. Jake had some family things happening, some work things happening where he had a lot of thrown on his plate. I had a lot of stuff on mine as well. So we weren't able to make that happen this year. We'll try to get back to it next year. But we do have season win bets that are in Jake's hands. He's going to do something with that and get that out to people somehow, some way. I don't even know for who. It might be for just Dub Club, might be for the socials. I don't know. He's in charge of that. It's off my plate. But Dub Club free until September 1st. QR code there, link in the show description. Check it out. At least for week 1, you'll get a lot of information. I think you'll like it. You'll make some money. Then we just appreciate you sticking around with some of the money that we help you make. And it's a we all help each other eat kind of thing, which would be a lot of fun. Otherwise, though, we thank you for watching. If you're still here after 2 hours, we thank you for watching the whole thing. We do appreciate that. We wish you the best of luck here, starting off college football, and remind you that you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.